Welcome again to Joe Stunner Boxing. So Harlem Eubank becomes the first man to stop TIMO SCHWARZKOPF, and overall I would say a pretty impressive performance. It was a 12-rounder because there was a WBO belt at stake, trinket, and Harlem got the job done finally in the 11th. But you know, TIMO SCHWARZKOPF, like I say, never stopped before. Was or is a former EBU champion. He won that back in 2018. He also coming into this fight, he had 20 wins with 5 defeats, but all 5 of the defeats were on points to some pretty good men. I mean, you know, Anthony Yigit beat him back in 2015. That's how far back this guy goes. I think he's only 32. And Yigit at the time was undefeated. He also lost on points to Chris Van Heerden. That was in 2018 when Van Heerden had a bit left. Very much a sort of decent European level gatekeeper. If you know, it'll give you problems. And his last fight, oddly enough, was against admittedly a rather ancient Miguel Vasquez, and SCHWARZKOPF beat him over 10 rounds. And that was, I think, 2 of the cards were quite close, and 1 was quite wide. It was a unanimous decision, but I mean, Vasquez is no one's mug, even at this very advanced stage of his career. I mean, Vasquez must be in his sort of mid to late 30s now. Still has something left though. SCHWARZKOPF, he will find you out if you're not on your A game. Very, very physical in the ring. Nothing scientific about him. But at the same time, nothing idiotic either. I mean, he likes to fire single jabs to the chest, usually. He fires an awful lot of hooks. Never neglects the body as well, SCHWARZKOPF. And he did that in this fight. He was firing some pretty decent body punches. Probably should have thrown a few more. But at the same time, he did have a lot to think about, because Eubank was, for most of these rounds, was being the one who was sort of, I suppose you'd say, more or less in control, although it wasn't easy for him. First 2 rounds, yeah, I thought, you know, pretty much standard stuff. Both guys just sort of settling in. Probably gave them to Eubank. In the third, in the first minute of the third, SCHWARZKOPF was really shaken by Harlem Eubank. And Harlem is not renowned as being a big banger. I mean, I think he's 18 wins, no defeats, no draws, but he's only got he only had 7 wins coming in by KO or TKO, but he did shake in the third round. He did shake TIMO SCHWARZKOPF, and then in the second minute of that round, he put him on the floor with an excellent uppercut. It really was really good, and we know another Eubank who favours the uppercut, which of course is Chris Jr. But I haven't seen Harlem using it too often, to be honest with you. I mean, Harlem, you know, I think last year he went the distance with Tom Farrell. 10 round, I think did he have him on the floor? I can't remember. It was a wide points decision, I know that. And, you know, also last year he got rid of Sean Dodd in 2 rounds. Dodd was at the end of his career. He kind of, I wouldn't say flatters to deceive Harlem Eubank, but there have been times where you think, oh yeah, this guy's getting it together, and there have been other times when he's a bit flat. And I think this fight against SCHWARZKOPF, even though he had SCHWARZKOPF on the floor in the third round, he did have a point taken off for repeated low blows. He was warned, and then the referee took a point off, and he was also warned again later on, and there was a threat of even more points coming off. Maybe even a disqualification. I don't know. This was in Brighton, so I doubt whether the referee would have disqualified him. But the thing about Eubank is that he does tend to, I mean, go to sleep a little bit for periods of a fight. To be honest with you, the uppercut, I mean, he floored him with the uppercut. He hurt him again with the uppercut. And yet Eubank started neglecting it. And SCHWARZKOPF was able to sort of regain his composure, get his senses back, because it was quite a heavy knockdown, that uppercut in the third round. And then he started to come on quite strong himself, just physically impose himself in that usual sort of no-nonsense meat and potatoes way, where he just, you know, once he gets in close, he's firing hooks. And again, like I say, he was punching to the body, which I would like to have seen Harlem Eubank do more of, to be honest with you. The round sort of ticked by. You really thought that it kind of had, you know, points written all over it. Eubank, again, there were periods of rounds when he wasn't doing nearly enough, and he wasn't showing much imagination either. And then he would suddenly, he'd have a period of maybe 30 seconds when he looked really impressive, when he was, you know, dipping into his toolbox and taking out, you know, punches, putting them together as you know, salvos and combinations. But I did think this was going to go the distance. And then out of the blue, in the 11th round, there was a huge right hook as Harlem was almost in one of the corners and was bent very low. Schwarzkopf came in, again, being kind of predictable, but at the same time very physical, coming in, and they exchanged punches, and the one that got there clean on the jaw, actually got there first, clean on the jaw, was Harlem Eubank, and that put Schwarzkopf over. He got up, it was a bad knockdown, he got up, his legs were all over the place, and the referee said, no, that's your lot. So it was a TKO in the 11th round for Harlem Eubank, kind of out of the blue. And it does make you wonder if Eubank, see Eubank, at times he was looking for one punch. It's the old line about when you score a knockdown, you shouldn't then therefore spend the rest of the fight looking for that same punch. If he'd fired more combinations with a bit more willing, because this right hook that finished Schwarzkopf off wasn't, I think he'd thrown about, I think it was one punch out of three, a combination of three. I'd have to look back at the replay, but it wasn't like he was simply looking for one punch. It seemed to flow, and frequently with Eubank, you don't see that. You see him being a little bit too, he either switches off or he's a little bit too flat, a little bit too predictable, and then he'll wake up and go forward and do something like that. Schwarzkopf complained about the stoppage, but there was no need to. It was a legitimate stoppage, perfectly legitimate. But that's the first time he's been stopped, so obviously his pride's a bit dented. Where does Eubank go from here? This was for the WBO, you know, global super lightweight. This was at 140, by the way. Whatever the global WBO thing is, I don't know. It probably gets him a ranking. But when he was interviewed afterwards with Chris Eubank Sr., they were immediately calling out Conor Benn. We want Conor Benn. Stop hiding. Come see us, etc., etc. But of course, he's got literally bigger fish to fry, which is the other Eubank up at middleweight. I suppose if he loses to that Eubank, there'll be money to be made if coming back down to 147, because Chris Eubank Sr. did say about Harlem, this is the last time he's at 140, he's a 147 guy. So I expect him to step into that division very, very soon. Did you see this fight? It was the headline on Channel 5. Tell me about it. What did you think? What do you think of Harlem Eubank? Is the jury still out? For me, it kind of is a little bit. He does some good things. He also does he's got some bad habits as well. But what did you think of the fight? Let me know. And of course, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and hit the like button if you like the video, and spread the word about Joe Stunner Boxing, and I will answer your comments. Thanks a lot. Bye for now.